What's up, YouTube audience? If you are looking for the best, most comprehensive starter sit advice, you have come to the right place. We'll give you week one streamers and break down 8 AFC home games, plus the Austin Ekeler injury and more right now on Fantasy Football Today. Good morning, everybody. It is game day, baby. It is Thursday, September 9th, and tonight, Chris Godwin's playing. Basically, everyone's healthy. Cowboys at Bucks. 2021 season begins. We'll give you our start of the week. We'll give you some streamers at each position. We'll talk about the Ekeler injury and break down 8 AFC home games. Adam Azer, Heath Cummings, and Jamie Eisenberg. You guys ready? What's your viewing habit for tonight? Like, give me your setup, Jamie, for Bucks Cowboys.
Hopefully my kids will be asleep. But first, we have Chris Godwin coming up on HQ at noon Eastern. So he's joining the show in advance of tonight's game, so that'll be exciting. Yeah, I hope my kids are asleep. There might be a little of watch the opening drive and then DVR the start and then go back to it. But yeah, it'll be fun.
You know, if you and I coordinate, my kids don't go to sleep until like 9. Sometimes my son at like 10. It's crazy. If you and I coordinate, maybe we can DVR and watch together. So you and I, we can tweet at each other.
Well, because I mean, my kids are older than yours. So like my 9-year-old, I'll probably let him watch the start of it. The 7-year-old who just turned 7 yesterday, so happy birthday, Eli.
Hey.
The 7-year-old will probably want to watch as well. He's into it. But it's the 3-year-old. Like if he gets wound up at that time, then it's a disaster.
Yeah. All right. Lessons learned. I'm taking mental notes for down the line. Heath, you got to just like smoke a big rack of ribs for tonight?
No.
Y'all ready to go?
No, I'll probably have some wings and some potato skins, and I have no idea what my kids will be doing. It's irrelevant to me tonight, so I'm all good. I'm past the point of having to care.
All right, guys, let's get into starts and sits here. We also have 60.
What's your viewing habit?
Well, ordinarily I would order a pizza. Thursday night is a good pizza night. Football is a pizza sport. But I have those, prepared meals that I get. I get like 3 a week. Not prepared. I have that, packaged meals. I have to cook them.
Right.
And I have one more and a new batch coming tonight. So I have to make the pork chops tonight. But if not, I would just eat a pizza, like a lot of it. And
why can't you make the pork chops tomorrow night?
Because I have the new shipment of meals coming tonight. So I really got to get rid of last week's before I
gotcha.
Yeah. Who's the player you love this week? Jamie, start with your start of the week.
Raheem Mostert. Yeah, love the setup for him. I think he's pissed, after the drafting of Sermon, a lot of people writing him off. He actually spoke about that at some point during the preseason. But it's more, clearly the Lions' run defense, I think, is going to be bad. The 49ers' run offense is going to be good. Both of those respectively top 3 in fantasy points allowed and fantasy points scored last season. 49ers run game, 3rd best. Lions were 2nd worst in allowing fantasy points to the position. There'll be some balancing out, I think, of that. But last year, in a bad season for the 49ers, they ran the ball with just their running backs on average 24.8 times, I think it was. They're going to run the ball. So I think Mostert's a great start, and Sermon's a pretty good sleeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at their rush attempts, the one year that really stands out was the Super Bowl year. Maybe I was looking at their pass attempts. They were very low that year because the defense was really good. Defense wasn't so good last year. Better defense this year, especially in this matchup. A lot of running. Are you considering at all starting Trey Sermon with the thought that he gets 15 carries for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter alone?
I do have Sermon as a flex in my rankings, but in the few leagues where I do have Trey Sermon, I know one in particular, like where I drafted. I don't want to say I neglected second running back, but waited on second running back, RB2. I drafted Javonte Williams and Trey Sermon, and I'm starting Trey Sermon over Javonte Williams.
Last question on Mostert, your start of the week. Would you start Mostert over T. Higgins against Minnesota?
I would. The question I got in regards to tonight's game was, would I start Raheem Mostert over Ezekiel Elliott? And that's very tempting in non-PPR. In PPR, I definitely still stick with Elliott, but it's close. You got a tough defense that Zeke is facing, and you got the offensive line concerns without Zach Martin there. It would not shock me if Mostert has a better game. So if you're that brave, I'm not, but if you're that brave, I would start Mostert over Zeke. It's one of those games like we're going to look back and say, why didn't I tell people to start Mostert over Zeke? But it's close. It's definitely ranked that way, close. But I still start Zeke in most cases.
All right, Heath, who's a player you love this week?
It'd be fun if I just went with the running back on the other side, right? I'll go with
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift, and I've loved him all preseason. But I love the fact that like we had to deal with this injury concern for the last 3 weeks of training camp, and it's been frustrating and it's been concerning. And he's just been a full go this week. It's as if there has not been any concern. And is there still a risk that he could have a setback during the game? I'm sure there is. But for the most part, if a guy is a full go all week for this season, we're just going to mostly not worry about them. And that's how I am with DeAndre Swift. I am very hopeful, not going to guarantee it, but I'm very hopeful we're going to find out in this game how good the pass catching running back can be in this offense, even when they're in a bad game script, even when they're playing against a good defense. I expect plenty of targets for Swift. I expect he'll make at least one play where he reminds us how good he is. And he's a top 15 running back for me this week.
Yeah, so we have a segment. It's called 60-second rankings disputes, but today it's 60-second Heath disputes because Heath is the odd man out on all of them. And I thought Dave was going to be on the show today.
But it's always fun to just pick the like 4 guys that everybody agrees on except for Heath, and let's just
I didn't pick them.
Do that.
I didn't pick them, but they're just all Heath guys. Swift is one of them because in PPR, Dave's in the middle. Jamie has Swift 27th, and Heath has him 13th. So 60-second ranking dispute. Jamie, go.
Yeah, I just don't want to trust the Lions against a really good defense. So, like, I'm concerned about Hawkinson. I'm concerned about Swift. Certainly concerned about the other guys that you would clearly not be starting in week 1. I think most people are going to start Swift. He's better in PPR than non-PPR. But like he said, I want to see it. I want to see what this is going to look like. I want to see what Jamal Williams is going to do. I want to see what happens when they're down 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Are they going to run their prize running back out there and risk him getting further injured? So I would take a cautious approach if you can. Like, I have Swift in a 14-team non-PPR league, and I am not starting him in that league.
Who are you starting?
Damian Harris, Darrell Henderson, and who was our first pick? It's my son's league that we share. Aaron Jones.
Okay. Let's go to players you are avoiding. Heath, who are you avoiding?
DeAndre Swift.
This is tough for me, and I struggled with the sits for today's show on HQ as well, because for the most part, like, we don't have any injuries. I'm for the most part starting the guys I drafted as starters and sitting the guys that I drafted as bench players because it's week 1. But I am a little bit concerned about Ben Roethlisberger.
Okay.
And the Steelers. Like, I'm worried about Juju and non-PPR. I'm worried about Claypool and full PPR. And like we've talked about it, a lot of my process for projections and touchdowns comes from the Vegas implied lines, and the Steelers aren't that far. I think they're implied for a point more than the Bears are against the Rams. And Vegas seems to think this Bills defense is either a lot better than I do, or the Steelers offense isn't going to make quite the big transition they did last year. So I'd rather not start a lot of Steelers in the passing game. I'm still starting Najee Harris, but I don't love the situation for him as a road underdog with a team that's not projected to score very many points.
Yeah, the Bills gave up the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers last year. They did great against the Steelers in the matchup. Sharp Football, as I mentioned yesterday, Sharp Football Analysis has them as the 2nd best secondary. I think Pro Football Focus has them top 5. So it is interesting. They don't give up big plays. So, all right. So, I mean, are you sitting Chase Claypool? Would you start Raheem Mostert over Claypool?
Definitely start Mostert over Claypool in non-PPR. I'd probably start Claypool in full PPR. But it's really close. I might just go with Mostert to feel a little bit better. I'm not sure how many more catches Claypool's going to have. I've got them basically at the same exact projection. In full PPR, I'd start Marquez Callaway over Claypool.
Jamie, who are you sitting this week?
I agree with Heath. I think it's going to be tough for the Steelers. Juju's actually my favorite, just in terms of where he's going to line up for the Steelers. Again, I don't think anybody's sitting these guys, but I'd be really concerned about the 2 top Bears guys, and Allen Robinson and David Montgomery, and I'm concerned about Saquon. Heath mentioned we don't have injury concerns, but we have some injury questions.
Right.
And Barkley is certainly at the top of the list. What's his workload going to be? They play Thursday night next week. So are they going to run him out there if they get behind? What's the concern level going to be about, giving him that workload? He's going to want to play. He's going to, I'm sure, be pushing to get on the field. He's definitely playing, but I'm saying once the game gets, maybe, I don't think it's going to get out of hand, but if it does. So those guys, make me nervous. Robinson had a okay game, 4 for 70 against the Rams and Ramsey last year. But I think part of that was if I'm not mistaken, a 42-yard reception in there, which was a season high for him. Yeah. So you take that away, which, that's Azer statting it. But if you take that away, it's clearly an even worse game for him. But
like 4 times. Why do we have to just say, no, we're not sitting Allen Robinson? I
have him as a borderline starter. This is one of I know what Heath is getting at, from his process. You draft these guys in a spot that you start to question, okay, am I really going to sit my first round pick if it was Barkley, my second round pick if it was Robinson or Montgomery, or third round pick? And that's the decision a lot of fantasy managers have to make. And so most people
if Allen Robinson were playing the Rams every week for 17 games,
you wouldn't draft him in the third round.
You wouldn't draft him in the 8th round.
But again, that 4 for 70, is that 11 points in PPR or 7 in non better than what Jacoby Myers is going to get you, or Marcus Callaway is going to get you, who also has a tough matchup, so it's just a matter of who you're sitting or who you're starting, Robinson over. So Montgomery, same thing. He had a miserable game. We had this conversation yesterday on HQ. I think it was you saying, Adam, he's going to get the catches, and then he followed up, his touches. Well, he had 19 touches in that game. He had 5 catches in that game. You say that right now, you sign up for that all day, right?
Of course, yeah.
He had 40 yards rushing and 21 yards receiving.
But I do think that kind of illustrates the point of what Adam and I were saying was it's both sides of it, because he averaged 3 yards per carry and 4 yards per reception and still scored 11.5 fantasy points.
And we're talking about the game last year against the Rams. Right. Obviously, we're not expecting an exact replica of the.
No, but you have to worry about road game. Fired up defense, offensive line concerns for the Bears still. So again, I don't expect. I'm starting Montgomery. I have him in 2 leagues. I'm starting him. I'm not gonna. I don't have quality options to bench. Like if I had Mostert, I would bench him for Mostert. If I had James Robinson, I'd bench him for Robinson. If I had Gus Edwards, those are all guys I like better than Montgomery this week by a lot.
Yeah, right. And I just don't see a scenario for Allen Robinson if you're in like a 3-receiver PPR league with that's how you sitting him. I guess I could see people being loaded in a 2-receiver league, and then maybe their flex would be a running back or something like that. But he that's in the 60-second rankings disputes, which we're just basically killing that segment right now, because Heath has Robinson 13th in non-PPR and 9th in PPR. Jamie's got him right around 24 in both formats. Dave's even lower, 29th in non-PPR, 27th in PPR for Allen Robinson, who he had 5 catches for 53 yards at Carolina last year. They were really good against wide receivers. He had 3 catches for 33 yards against the Giants. They were good against number ones. But he had 87 yards and a touchdown against the Saints, who have Marcus Lattimore. He had 74 yards and 2 touchdowns at the Packers, who have Jair Alexander, who was one of the best cornerbacks in football last year. So Heath, at Robinson, it's not like he had no good games in tough matchups last year. And you have him in your top 12. You want to
I think this goes back to, like, you and I had this discussion about Allen Robinson during the preseason. I think Allen Robinson, if everything went perfect with Justin Fields, could possibly be the number 1 wide receiver in football. I think he's that talented. Allen Robinson is not the type of player that I'm generally going to sit against any matchup. Okay.
All right. We'll get into some streaming options if you need them. I just want to bring up Josh Jacobs. He's one of the last players we're going to talk about today. He's the last game we're going to preview is Baltimore and the Raiders, because it's basically start them all, sit them all. But Jacobs, it's obviously you're starting Waller. This is a bad setup for Jacobs. He played in 8 losses last year. I think he missed 1 game and it was a win. So he played in all 8 of their losses last year. He had only 2 games with more than 7 non-PPR and more than 9 PPR fantasy points. He had only 1 game with more than 12 PPR fantasy points. We heard Dan Schneier bring this up in the preseason. Josh Jacobs is one of the most game script dependent running backs. They are facing the Ravens. It is a home game. It is Monday night. Maybe that keeps them in it a little bit. But if they lose by double digits, if they lose in general, if they're trailing, I'm pretty nervous. I'm probably going to start James White over Josh Jacobs in a full PPR league.
I would too. Yeah.
I think it could be a really bad game for Jacobs.
It's also, we have a story that we got to keep an eye on. He's supposed to return to practice on Thursday. He's been missing practice time for an undisclosed reason. Now, obviously, the Monday night game, they get the extra day. So Thursday is technically their first day of submitting an injury report. It reportedly is not an injury situation. But if he misses practice on Thursday, you absolutely should play the Bucs guys and the Cowboys guys. Not that I'm telling you anything about the running backs there, but if you have a flex question, like I would play Michael Gallup potentially if you're in a deeper league. Obviously, the Bucs receivers are easy because you know they're going to have good games. But if you're looking at the Bucs running backs compared to Jacobs and you don't have any other options, you play Ronald Jones, maybe you play Fournette, maybe you play Bernard. But just keep an eye on that, because if he doesn't practice on Thursday, could be something that we have to worry about going into Monday.
So we got something really cool on the website, cbssports.com/start-sit. cbssports.com/start-sit. This is our starter sit.
I appreciate that. Thank you for talking up.
FFT Start Sit Challenge. Yeah, Jamie also has the starter sit article. Each week you can answer 10 starter sit questions to win a customized Trophy Smack Championship belt with your name engraved. Very cool stuff. The overall winner for the season gets $1,000 and a guest appearance on this podcast. One question this week, guys. Give me your analysis real quick. A.J. Dillon versus Jamal Williams. So you just go on the website, you answer these starter sit questions. A.J. Dillon versus Jamal Williams. If you needed a running back, who would you start this week?
Dillon in non-PPR, Williams in PPR.
I'd probably go Williams in both, but yeah, I think it's a very, very close for me in non-PPR. and full PPR, I'd definitely go Williams.
Remember, that is cbssports.com/start-sit to play. And I want to tell you our YouTube live stream schedule for the fall. Tuesday, these all times are Eastern. Tuesday, 8 p.m., Thursday, 2 p.m., Sunday, 11:30 a.m., and 8:15 p.m. We're podcasting live, our Sunday night / Monday morning recap podcast, 8:15 p.m. That's our YouTube schedule for the fall. So we'll see you today at 2 p.m., Thursday afternoons at 2 to answer your start sit questions. All of that is at youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. Give me Heath and Jamie. First, Heath, though, your overall week one philosophy. How much do you look at last year? Basically that's the major question. And how much is it just, I'm going to start the guys I drafted as starters? What's your overall week one philosophy?
Yeah, I think I kind of already said mine. I'm not totally just starting the guys I drafted, but for the most part, my week one rankings probably look the most like my draft rankings. There are some major exceptions to that, but I'm not as confident in the defensive matchups and who are going to be the 3 to 5 teams that matter either direction. So I'm sticking mostly with my usage projections and then using Vegas for touchdown projections and going off that.
Jamie?
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, obviously I factor in a lot more of who they're facing, but it doesn't deviate too much. Like tight end, for example, there's not a lot that's leapfrog. Nobody's really leapfrogging the top 6 guys. And in this case, like Logan Thomas, for example, with the Curtis Samuel injury, I hate the matchup against Derwin James and the Chargers, but I think you're still starting Logan Thomas. But there has to be some level of, okay, now it's real. Who's on the other side? You're not looking at season long, like for example of Robinson or Montgomery. So guys could have some tough matchups that you're still starting, and I think that's the thing is most people are going to start them. It's frustrating when you write or you talk about advice like we do here, and people, even though they understand what you're saying and they listen to what you're saying, they're not going to do it because you drafted these guys in a certain spot, and why would you bench them? So it's just the nature of, okay, I drafted this guy, I'm so excited about this guy. Like here, think about this from our perspective. We started talking about week one while we're still doing drafts. So like I'm doing drafts Tuesday night, Wednesday night. I've already written start sit, and I'm like, okay, I hate this guy for week one,
right?
But I gotta get that out of my head because I want to think about what the season long situation is. So some guys may struggle week one, and that's okay. They're still going to be great over the course of the season. So don't panic.
Yep. All right. Injuries, news, and notes. Chris Godwin's playing tonight. Austin Ekeler missed practice with a hamstring injury. Do you think Justin Jackson is a must-add right now?
He is an add. I don't want to use the word must add because people will now start to drop players that they shouldn't. So he still may play. Ekeler still may play. And even if he doesn't play, is it definitely Justin Jackson? We assume it's going to be the lead guy. But they kept Joshua Kelly around for a reason. They kept Larry Roundtree around for a reason. So I don't want people to just, all of a sudden, oh, man, Tony Jones, I'm excited. Oh, now I'll drop him for Justin Jackson. Or, I picked up receiver X, or he was my last pick. I'm going to drop him, and that receiver might be Elijah Moore. So don't do those type of things just yet.
I am as the Justin Jackson guy. I will. I say I drafted him in I think 6 leagues before this. I think he's a top 48 running back this week if Ekeler plays. So I do think that he should be added pretty much everywhere. But I wouldn't. I agree. I don't want to drop too good a player for him. I mean, if you're in a 10-team league or something like that, I think we did pick him up in a 10-team league, dropping Gallman. But I'd rather have him than Gallman because I think he could have a role even if Eckler's healthy.
Yeah. We probably should have just drafted him instead of Gallman, but that was easy. Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, all expected to play. Evan Ingram seems less likely for this game against the Broncos. Curtis Samuel left practice with an injury, so that's it's just been a rough offseason for Curtis Samuel, and they have the Chargers coming to town. Ramondre Stevenson dislocated his thumb last week facing the Dolphins. Do we know if Ramondre Stevenson is going to play?
The report I saw seemed to indicate that they are still hoping he can play, but I don't know what his workload will be. I don't know what his workload would have been if he was healthy. So
I saw yesterday that he's full go. Doesn't mean he's going to have a big workload, but he's full go injury-wise.
All right. Thank you, Ben Schrager. He's like, oh, yeah, I got to get on here. It's a chance to shine. Houston signed Danny Amendola. Do we care? Just say no. No. Okay, great. Carson Wentz is going to start, and I'm going to start him over Derek Carr in 2QB.
Ooh.
Yeah. Sean McVay said he could go for a Big Mac. Who
are you starting over Carr?
Carson Wentz.
Why?
Derek Carr is going to have a terrible game. Absolutely terrible game.
And Carson Wentz isn't?
No, I mean, yeah, he is. But this is why.
Why would you not shoot for the guy with the higher ceiling? You think Wentz has higher ceiling?
Definitely not Derek Carr.
But do you think Wentz is?
I think Wentz has a higher ceiling, personally.
Yeah, I'd be concerned with the foot though.
Oh, I'm concerned. Like, yeah, I'm definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, like, not finishing the game concerned.
Whatever. If he's gonna play, he's gonna.
I think you should start Derek Carr.
Am I playing you?
I don't know. I have Derek Carr ranked higher.
Well,
I'm just trying to help you.
If you don't accept my Jameis Winston trade, I'll start Jameis Winston. Sean McVay said he smelled a Big Mac and said he could go for a Big Mac. And yeah, they're pretty good. I'm going to give him that one. But that's a good sense of smell. Like a very distinct smell when you get the bag of McDonald's. Trey Lance could be available. He has that small fracture in his finger. We don't know what his role will be. New Orleans trading for cornerback Bradley Roby from Houston. He is suspended for week 1, so that will not help in this game against Green Bay at home in Jacksonville. And Patrick Mahomes is 10-0 in September over the last 3 seasons per ESPN. They start very fast, these Chiefs. They are basically unbeatable in September. Good luck, Cleveland. We're going to take a quick break here on Fantasy Football Today. When we come back, we'll give you streaming options at each position and get into the games right after that, basically. So we'll be right back on FFT. We don't usually do streaming options like this on the Thursday shows, but this is an unusual week. We didn't have the waiver wire on Tuesday. We didn't talk much starter sit on Wednesday. So, yeah, let's just say you've got a bad matchup or, you're in a deeper league or something. Give me some streaming options. Heath, let's start with quarterback. Who would you be looking to stream?
I think my highest ranked quarterbacks that are owned in fewer than 60% of leagues are Ryan Fitzpatrick and Derek Carr. Neither of them have good matchups. It's not a week where there is a streamer that's in my top 15. So I wouldn't say, like I said, like we've said about everything else, it's week 1. Pretty much all the quarterbacks are healthy. Hopefully you're not streaming, but Carr and Fitzpatrick would be my 2 favorites below 60% ownership roster rate.
Okay. I'm going to get the roster percentage list up here. Make sure we're not missing anyone. Jamie, any running backs that might be available to stream? That's never an easy one.
I mean, obviously Justin Jackson now becomes someone you got to keep an eye on there. I'll pull up the same list as well. So I have.
Yeah, Gio is exactly 60% rostered. He'd probably be my favorite in a PPR league tonight.
Yeah, I would imagine those 60%, those where he's rostered. Go get Tony Jones, even if you don't play him. He's at 47%. That's an easy one. Mark Ingram. I think he's got an opportunity against Jacksonville as what I would consider to be the lead guy. I know Philip Lindsay's going to get his touches, but Mark Ingram for sure. He's the most available of the guys I think that have an opportunity to start and maybe score. 27% is his roster percentage on CBS. So he's somebody. But Jackson for sure.
How about any Jets?
No, but I guess Tevin Coleman would be my favorite, and then Ty Johnson second. Tevin Coleman's at 53%.
All right, let's hope you're not dipping into the running back waiver wire.
Oh, Nyheim Hines too. If you're looking PPR, also he's slightly more rostered than Gio, but in that same range.
How about wide receivers, Heath? Who are the streamable wide receivers?
Well, I mean, I would probably just say Elijah Moore, because even if you lose this week, I'd rather have Elijah Moore on my team, and he's still only rostered in 58% of leagues. Sterling Shepard in full PPR. One of the Lions guys, either call Tyrell or Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think both of those guys have a chance to at least get some garbage time points.
Okay.
Rondale Moore too.
Mm-hmm. All right, and by the way, for that Nyheim Hines call, boy, the Seahawks were just terrible against pass catching running backs last year. Don't know if it'll carry over, but they allowed 40 or more receiving yards to 6 running backs, 30 or more receiving yards to 11 running backs last season. And tight ends to stream, Jamie.
Austin Hooper. He's got hopefully better performance than he did against the Chiefs in the playoff game last year, but he closed, including the Steelers game in the first round of the playoffs for them, the wild card round. His last 4 games prior to that were pretty impressive, but we'll see what happens with Beckham now back in the fold. Gerald Everett, I don't know what the Seahawks are going to do between Everett and Will Dissly, who's going to be the better of the two, but he's available, and Russell Wilson was talking him up. Zach Ertz, he's a little bit more rostered than we typically talk about, but under 70%. So, great matchup, and we'll see if he's better than Goddard. And then Hunter Henry, we don't know what the Patriots tight end situation is going to look like, but he's free. 52% is his roster percentage, and he might be better than John. We've said that quite a bit. So not a bad guy to take a flyer on, even just to see what happens.
Speaking of tight end situations, we don't know what's going to happen with them. Blake Jarwin is 20% rostered. Tampa Bay, like you said, Adam, yesterday, gave up quite a bit of production to tight ends relative to wide receivers. And Jarwin's at the top of the depth chart, so he at least worked through the injury enough to get to that point.
Okay.
A lot of the production they gave up, though, was early in the season. So you wonder, whatever they work through toward the end of the year.
They were 21st against tight ends. No, in the last 8 games for the Bucs, 6 tight ends had 70 yards or a touchdown.
Am I thinking of the wrong team?
Maybe. Irv Smith, Hayden Hurst twice, Logan Thomas, Robert Tonyan, and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I must be thinking of the wrong team. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. And what was I going to say? Nobody mentioned Dan Arnold against the Jets. The Jets are remember 2 years ago, the Cardinals were not just the worst team against tight ends. They were one of the worst teams in years against tight ends. They were the free space, and then they were next best last year, I think.
Remember 3 years ago, the Giants gave up a touchdown to a tight end every single week. And then the next week they were fine.
Yeah, but their personnel did change. The Jets still should be absolutely dreadful on defense. Well, no, 2 years ago, I don't remember the Giants exactly, but no, you're right. It doesn't always carry over. But anyway, would you think about Dan Arnold or no? Is that just too risky?
I would actually look at the other tight end in the game, Tyler Kroft, knowing that Crowder's banged up, and if it is, we keep saying, okay, the 49ers offense. Yeah, they may run the ball or try to run the ball like the 49ers offense. What if the tight end is like the 49ers offense? Now, obviously, Tyler Kroft is nowhere in the stratosphere of George Kittle, but what if the targets are? What if the opportunity is? And the Panthers are bad against tight ends last year, too.
And Adam, I think that a lot of Twitter and other fantasy football people are with you on the Dan Arnold call.
No, not with me. I was just asking.
You just made the Dan Arnold call. I hope you're right. I hope he scored a touchdown. But the thing that I struggle with they've got DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey. They just drafted Terrace Marshall. I don't know how there's any targets for Dan Arnold.
He's got to score. It'll be like a 2 for 30 and a touchdown type of game for him to be good. And it can happen.
Yeah. Look, if you want to do a Panthers DFS stack, I'm not going to hate you for it. It could be the best game of the year for Sam Darnold. In fact, bold prediction, this will be the best game of the year for Sam Darnold. I don't know how many points, but It will be the best. It's the best matchup.
That's a good streaming quarterback too.
Yeah. Okay. Start your starters though. Cleveland and Kansas City. Here we go. Let's get into the games. Not doing 60-second rankings disputes. We pretty much did them all. Cleveland and Kansas City. I'll give you some stats of the game, but who knows if they matter. But this one probably does. Does Cleveland throw more in losses? They lost 6 games last year, including the playoffs. They threw 39, 28, 25. And I think that game was a bad weather game. Like really bad. 48, 53, and 37 times.
That was their stretch of like just miserable weather, right? Back to back to back.
Yes. One of them was a loss. And usually the pass attempts are up, 30, 37 or more in 4 of those 6 games. So that's good. A stat of the game number 2, and this one is now 2 years in a row. The Chiefs have allowed the most receiving yards per game to running backs. And 3 years ago, they were 5th worst. So this appears to be maybe a Spags thing. I don't know, but
I think so.
That's 3 years in a row.
Well, and like shockingly, the Chiefs were really good against wide receivers last year.
Oh yeah. Makes no sense.
Every year. I think L'Jarius Sneed's pretty good, and apparently has gotten a little bit better in the offseason. So I think if you're going to go off the matchups thing for week 1, and we know how extreme Odell Beckham was in terms of good versus bad matchups last year, this would not be a game where you would feel good about him.
Especially if his snaps are going to be limited. We don't know that, but the fact that they rested him on Wednesday, like I always hate this, with guys that are coming back from stuff.
Yeah.
Week 1, you got to be rested.
Yeah, Chris. So I mentioned this yesterday. I never followed up on the show. On Tuesday night stream, Chris said that the Browns were going to be pretty conservative with Beckham. He might play pretty limited snaps in week 1. I was trying to find that on The Athletic because I thought that's where he cited it from. I couldn't exactly find that. I saw a little bit of speculation.
You're saying Chris made it up?
No. Chris is really good with that stuff. I mean, he's very in tune with.
I'm kidding.
No, but just saying, like you read his newsletter, it's a great way to stay up to date on the news. If you follow him on Twitter, I mean, that's Chris nails that stuff. Are we just basically saying to sit Beckham though in this game where they could be throwing a lot? This is if you're going to start Beckham, isn't this the time to start Beckham, or is it just too risky?
Oh, I'd wait and see. I would absolutely wait and see. It's not an easy matchup. It's again, they like their backup receivers. They like Peoples-Jones. They like Higgins. They're going to lean on Hooper. They're going to try and run the ball. I mean, so I know what you're saying, Adam. Late in the game, does Beckham have a chance to play well? Is he in the game late in the game? Because they're looking long term. They're not necessarily trying to win the Super Bowl in week 1. They want to make sure that guy's right. So I would be a little cautious with Beckham. If it was a slam dunk, this is going to be a shootout, these two teams, and the secondary is not good, then I think you got to, buy into it. He's a number 3 receiver, so if you don't have a better third receiver, you start Beckham.
And I'm assuming you're not interested in Landry.
I'm not interested in Landry when Beckham's on the field until I see otherwise.
Right.
And then what about Mayfield, Heath?
No, not really.
Yeah. Okay. Big total in this game.
I mean, look, they went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs in the playoffs, and Mayfield didn't have a great game.
Yeah, Mahomes got hurt in that game. I don't remember what the score was at the time, but
they were losing.
Who was losing?
The Chiefs.
The Chiefs were losing?
Weren't they? Oh, no, not when Mahomes got hurt. No.
I think they were up 1 score when they got hurt, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember now. Okay,
so we're not starting Mayfield. Well, he's 17th for Jamie, 22nd for Dave, not ranked for Heath. The Cleveland running backs. So everyone's going to start Nick Chubb, but I will scare you a little bit. He only played in 4 losses last year. He had 10, 17, 11, and 13 carries. So,
and I think Kareem Hunt was better than him in the playoff game.
He was because he scored, but Chubb I think had more catches actually in the playoff game. Starter sit Kareem Hunt.
He's a borderline starter, better in PPR than non-PPR. Same in half, but yeah, I'm with you. I think based on what you said, he's going to have to play a role in the passing game. Obviously, there's a little bit of a revenge game factor still, going back to Arrowhead. So, we'll see. I think he's a definite flex play for sure.
I would start him over both the Broncos, and I'd start him over Trey Sermon.
I have a funny Kareem Hunt draft-related story. So, guy that certainly Adam, and our audience has heard me mention years ago, but James Questel is our former Fantasy Football Today producer, the original FFT producer for the video show. So when it wasn't on before HQ, like this is how far back this guy goes with us. So he's in a pretty heavily big money league. And he was using my rankings. We were talking through it, but it was my son's birthday last night. So sometimes I didn't get the phone call in time. He's like, oh, we got 30 seconds left on the clock. I got the guys, your highest ranking guys queued up. He's like, Kareem Hunt, this guy. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, we need a third running back. Take Kareem Hunt. And then he's like, okay, cool. We got Kareem Hunt. Yeah, Adam Thielen just went, and Darrell Henderson just went. I'm like, what queue are you working off of? That's not my guys. He's like, oh, I hit the wrong button.
Oh man.
So he drafted a really, really good team, but I keep trying to tell him, like, listen, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, a month from now, whatever the case may be, if Nick Chubb gets hurt, that's the best pick you could have ever made. Don't necessarily love him over some of the guys that you took, but still, it's okay. Don't panic.
You can't hit the wrong button during the drafts. By the way, my wife had a fantasy draft last night, and she crushed. Her team is.
You cheated, didn't you?
I did it. That's the thing. I knew it. I knew it. That's what I was going to say. I was like, there's no way anyone is going to believe that I didn't draft the team for her. But she had
let me text somebody who might have a connection to that
I
league.
swear to you.
Once you have the Scarlet C, it's just everyone assumes you're going to do it over and over and over again.
Somehow, it's a 10-team league. Somehow she ended up with CeeDee Lamb, Robert Woods, and another wide receiver that's like right in that range. CeeDee Lamb, whatever. 3 guys who all go within 10 picks of each other. So how did you do that? And her first 2 picks were running backs. All right, anyway.
How did you do that?
I don't know. She did it. I don't know. Amazing. So okay, Austin.
Allie, you're on the clock.
Austin Hooper's not ranked for Dave, but he's borderline top 12 for Jamie and Heath. He did catch a touchdown in 3 of his last 5 regular season games. He had 71 yards in one of the other 2 games. He had a strong finish, as Jamie mentioned, except for that game against the Chiefs, who allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends. On the Chiefs side, Mahomes, yes. Hill, yes. Kelsey, yes. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, kind of borderline for you guys. But, look, there's nobody on bye. So his ranking is fairly similar to his preseason ranking. It's outside the top 15, but it's inside the top 24. But Heath, are there guys you would consider starting over Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
The guys who were drafted after him, I would say Chris Carson, I would. James Robinson, I would. Mike Davis, I would. Of course, I'm starting DeAndre Swift over him. I've got him right next to Raheem Mostert. I assume Jamie has Mostert ahead of him. I should probably move Mostert ahead of Clyde just for the start of the week team effort. But yeah, there are guys who are drafted in round 5 or round 6 that you might start over Clyde. But there's also a guy like I would definitely start Clyde over Saquon Barkley this week. I would start him over Josh Jacobs. So there's guys that were drafted in the same range too.
Would you start Antonio Brown or Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
That's tough in PPR.
I don't want to sit Antonio Brown. I've got this feeling, but I would probably start Clyde.
When you look at the Browns, I obviously we're high on their defense, not necessarily this game, but I feel like their defensive tackles could be their weakness. It's a new unit. They had
linebacker too.
Sheldon Richardson and Ogunjobi last year. It might be better, but their pass rush and their secondary looks loaded. All right, Minnesota at Cincinnati at last check.
By the way, just on Antonio Brown for tonight's game. So Heath and I do the first portion of the Wednesday Fantasy Football Today show on HQ with Pete Prisco. And Pete has always been a little bit concerned about Brown for this season. When he said what he said about him yesterday, that made me a little bit more excited about Antonio Brown. So he said that when he was with the Bucks, Brown had a bad day, pouting about not getting the ball, getting into it with defensive backs on the sideline. And to Pete, who's been around the NFL for 30 years, gave off just some bad body language vibe, if you want to read body language, but that's not usually Pete's thing, but he just happened to bring it up. And then he has a good relationship with the coaching staff there. So he said he's been checking on just, how they think of Brown. He's like, he's never heard that staff rave about a player like that.
Yeah, Bruce Arians just did it the other day. By the way, you said Pete so many times there. I just took so many drinks of water.
We used to have a producer that would, when he wanted Pete on the show, he would walk around the office going, Pete, 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 Pete.
Dude, stop, man. I can't that game right now. All right, Minnesota, Cincinnati. Vikings are a 3-point favorite. Total is 47.5. Stat of the game is actually the Bengals. They were only 17th against quarterbacks last year. They weren't terrible. PFF has their secondary 15th. Sharp Football Analysis has their secondary 18th. So they have a solid secondary.
Safeties are great.
Yeah, and unfortunately, though, the issue is they get no pressure. They had the third lowest pressure rate in the NFL, according to Pro Football Reference, but they did add Trey Hendrickson. So that's, hopefully that helps. But anyway, is this an easy matchup for Cousins? Is this a time when you want to start Kirk Cousins, guys?
I would feel better about it if Joe Burrow had a better preseason.
Because you want them to score. You want the Bengals to score,
right. I do think there's
I
still
would
a
feel
risk.
better about it if the Vikings didn't have such good defense.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I would start Cousins over anybody we said as a streamer before. I'd start Cousins over. I would not start Cousins over anyone that you drafted as a top 12 quarterback.
Jamie, I know you don't love Herbert this week. Would you start Cousins or Herbert?
That's the one I struggle with, honestly. I would start Herbert over him just because I think there's a little bit higher ceiling if Herbert does what he's typically been capable of doing. But I hate the matchup for Herbert too. But I just think, like he said, the question that I'm concerned about is how much Cousins will have to do. Now, is it will they do what they want to do? Because I do think it's, they're down Trey Waynes again in terms of the Bengals not having one of their corners they were counting on. The safeties are great, but the safeties aren't covering Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So they're going to make things tough on those guys. But I still think that Cousins will have enough opportunities to be in the starting conversation by the end of the week. I just don't think you want to necessarily trust him going into the week. And to Heath's question, guys that we drafted as starters, Burrow was drafted as a starter in some cases. I would definitely start Cousins over Burrow.
Heath, would you start Cousins over Burrow?
I have Burrow 2 spots higher.
Okay.
I think Burrow's this Vikings defense. I'm so excited to watch because
why? They're obviously going to be better, but let's talk about this. You really think they're going to be that good?
They have one of the best pass rushers back in the NFL going against that offensive line with Neil.
How about Everson Griffin?
No, Hunter.
Oh, Danielle Hunter. Okay, yeah.
I forgot about him.
A little bit.
The secondary is going to be better. Just with the guys that they added. I know Patrick Peters is not the same guy, but the other two guys that they added as well, McKenzie and what was it?
Mackenzie Alexander and Xavier Woods.
Yeah, they're going to add just better depth to what was a miserable secondary last year. So pass rush better, secondary better. Still questionable offensive line for the Bengals. I think they're going to do whatever they want to against that. The whole Bengals offense scares me. You're not benching Joe Mixon, but I think you can get away from the receivers.
Also, 2 new defensive tackles. You got Dalvin Tomlinson, who came over from the Giants, and bigger news, I'd say, is Michael Pierce, who sat out.
If he's right, sat out last year because of COVID concerns. But
yeah. All right. So start Dalvin Cook. I'm assuming Jefferson obviously must start. Thielen must start.
Yes,
I'm starting Thielen. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, they weren't that bad against wide receivers last year, but I went and looked at the game logs, and basically every good wide receiver, except for a small handful of exceptions, every wide receiver that you would normally start had a good game against Cincinnati last year. So we'll see if that holds up. And any interest in a Vikings tight end against Cincinnati?
No.
They listed Herndon third on the depth chart, so you got to let him work his way through whatever, learning the playbook if he's ever going to get it. Conklin is banged up still, so no.
All right, Joe Burrow is 19th for Jamie, 14th for Dave and Heath. And Joe Mixon is top 12 in both formats. But, could be a tough matchup. Let's come on, Joe Mixon. Start off with a good note here. But, yeah, we expect him to catch some passes too. All right, then let's talk about the Cincinnati wide receivers. How confident are you in them? Who's your favorite? Heath, give me the rundown of the Bengals receivers.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a great deal of confidence in any of them. Higgins is the one that I think has probably the most week 1 upside. I view them all basically as number 3 wide receivers. I would rank them Higgins, Boyd, and Chase.
Let's do some running backs versus these receivers. DeAndre Swift or Tyler Boyd. Swift
for me.
Boyd in PPR, Swift, and everything else.
Darrell Henderson against the Bears, against these versus the Bengals receivers.
Henderson in all formats for me.
Yeah, I think I have. I'll take the Bengals receivers over Henderson.
Forget who I'm starting T Higgins over I'm starting Higgins over. Sorry, I can't remember. Some running back in there. I like Higgins. I feel like Higgins is going to be started in most leagues.
Yeah.
All right. And if we think the Vikings are going to score, then that bodes well. Minnesota's DST is 17th for Heath, but top 12 for Dave and Jamie, 5th for Jamie. All right, Pittsburgh at Buffalo. I won't even give the stats of the game. They're mostly irrelevant, except for this one.
They played each other week 14 last year. You got a pretty good blueprint about what this is going to look like.
No, you better not, because that was a horrible game for Ben Roethlisberger. Like,
you're expecting that much better?
I'm expecting
He'll be better, but that much better?
Well, not where I'm starting him.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was so bad in that game. What did he have?
Their pass rush got better for Buffalo, man. Your kid's going to be great for them.
Yeah, Gregory Rousseau and Boogie Basham. I don't know what they'll do in the first game of the season, but they were the first and second round picks for Buffalo. I don't know. One thing. Well, first of all, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss played 13 games together. Only once did Singletary score more than 11 PPR points. Only once did Moss score more than 12 PPR points. So, any interest in starting a Buffalo running back?
No.
I've got Singletary as a mid-range flex.
That's fair.
So if we look at this game, you're starting Allen, you're sitting Roethlisberger. You're starting Harris. You're trying to avoid the Buffalo running backs. You're starting Diggs. Are you starting any other Bills wide receiver?
No.
I want to see it first. I want to see what Sanders does in relation to Beasley, what Beasley and Sanders do in relation to Davis. I think Davis is a good DFS play just because if he hits a big play, it could be one of those, league winning type of things, but no, not yet.
By the way, can you name the only quarterback last year that scored more than 22 points against Pittsburgh? 6-point per passing touchdown league, non-decimal. Only one.
Down.
Josh Allen.
It was not. It was Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. Not one quarterback in the regular season, not Allen, not Watson, Tannehill, Lamar Jackson, none scored more than 22 fantasy points against Pittsburgh. Amazing. All right, then. Let's talk about the Bengals wide receivers versus the Steelers wide receivers. Jamie, which group overall do you have more confidence in?
It's a great question. Probably still the Steelers.
Yep.
But
Who's
it's
the highest ranked of the 6?
I said I like Juju the best. I think I still have, though, Deontay Johnson ranked higher. I probably need to change that. But right now it's Deontay Johnson. But I feel the most comfortable, I think, about Juju because I think Juju, where he lines up mostly, is going to avoid Tre'Davious White and Levi Wallace. So I think he's got the best chance to maybe have some success.
Yeah, I'd go Deontay, Juju, Higgins, and PPR. And I've still got Claypool ahead of them in non-PPR.
So how do you feel about a guy like Damian Harris, who is, not going to catch a lot of passes? Not quite sure what kind of a matchup that is against the Dolphins. Not like Gus Edwards against the Ravens. How do you feel about a guy like Damian Harris against the Steelers wide receivers?
I would start Harris over all of them in non-PPR. In PPR, though, I'd probably still start certainly the top 2 Steelers receivers in Deontay Johnson and Juju.
Yeah, in PPR, I'd probably start all of the Steelers and all of the Bengals wide receivers. In non-PPR, I'd probably start Harris over all of them. There's a big difference between running backs and wide receivers, especially running backs like Damian Harris compared to wide receivers in non versus PPR.
Yeah, and I know nobody's going to start a Steelers tight end, but this is just something to watch for the future. Buffalo allowed the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends last year, and they saw the most targets. They've got a very good secondary, so it's possible that teams are just going to attack them with the tight ends. They saw the most targets from opposing tight ends in the NFL.
Which is really amazing when you consider how little the Patriots, Jets, and Dolphins used their tight ends. And they played 6 games against those 2 teams last year. I mean, Gesicki had stretches where he was heavily used, but for the most part, like they didn't play good tight ends in 6 games and still get that's interesting.
Yeah.
I will say, though, Matt Milano being in and out of the lineup last year did not help them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. All right, Miami at New England. Pittsburgh's DST, by the way, is not a top 12 DST. Buffalo's is just inside the top 12. So I know a lot of you like to roster 2 DSTs. You know.
Pittsburgh, part of that for me was the TJ Watt situation. I'll probably move him up a few spots if he plays.
All right, let's go to Miami and New England. Interesting game here. You would think it'd be low scoring. Let me check the total here.
It might be the lowest of the week.
43.5. Looks like Denver and the Giants is a little bit lower, 42. And yeah, I think those are the 2 lowest scoring totals, totals of the week. And the Patriots are 3-point favorites. Looking forward to this game, even though it might not be fantasy appealing. This is interesting. And this stat of the game, I'm going to question your rankings. You all have Mike Gesicki 8th in non-PPR, you 2 plus Dave. You all have him top 12 in PPR. Why? The Patriots gave up the 6th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. They faced the 4 best tight ends in football last year. They faced Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, and Andrews, and they still were 6th best against tight ends. Their defense is only going to be better this year. Is it just because of the tight end position? Why do you have so much faith in Mike Gesicki?
It's twofold for me. One, you mentioned the tight end position being what it is. And 2, the fact that Fuller's not playing and Parker still is not, I think, at full strength. You know, their third receiver is going to be Jakeem Grant. This has been the setup for Gesicki. Whenever there's been a key guy missing, he's typically played well. Now, obviously, the key guy has been Preston Williams. So take that for what it is. They do have Waddle still there. They obviously have Parker still there. So, you know, that's a different duo than what they were dealing with last year. But I think Tua is going to have to throw to some extent in this game. I don't know if Gesicki falls in line with some of the tight ends that they typically try to take away. So if this was a week 7, hey, look, this tight end's been playing great and that tight end's been playing great, Gesicki's probably not ranked as high because of the matchup. But just looking at the landscape of the position, I think he's got a chance to finish in the top 12.
I'd go even further. Like if I just knew for sure who the number 1 tight end was for the Patriots or for Tampa Bay or for the Cowboys, like we've got so many of these situations where I've got multiple tight ends that could be a part of the equation. But I don't like Mike Gesicki all that much. Just that's where he ended up.
Okay. Makes sense then. And let's talk about this game in general. First of all, we're going to sit the quarterbacks.
I would like to.
Yeah, unless it's a 2 quarterback league or something.
And Sam Darnold or Tua?
I'd go Tua.
Arnold Tua. Okay, who's the best flex? Is it Gaskin? Is it a Patriots running back? Is it Jacoby Myers? Is it Jalen Waddle? Who's the best flex in this game?
Gaskin is my favorite player in the game. I think he's a must-start guy, so I don't think he's a flex.
I just meant running back, receiver type.
Yeah, no, Gaskin for me.
I would say Gaskin and PPR, Harrison none. Gaskin and half, so you don't have to ask.
All right, what about? Well, let's stay on Myles Gaskin for a little bit here. Behind Mostert?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Behind Gus?
In non-PPR, no.
In non-PPR, yes, but ahead of him in full PPR.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'd rather have Gaskin. And no, I take Gus in both.
I'll take Gaskin and PPR, Gus and none.
Clyde or Gaskin?
Clyde.
Clyde and non, Gaskin and PPR.
Barkley or Gaskin?
Gaskin.
I think I'm going to move Gaskin ahead of Barkley in PPR. I have Barkley higher in none.
This is a fascinating game because last year, you mentioned that, the Patriots defense obviously got better. I almost wonder if this was the game that the Patriots circled and said, this is the game we have to improve on, because they met in week 15 and the Dolphins ran for 200 plus yards with Savon Ahmed and Malcolm Brown and Matt Breida going for 200 and a touchdown. Gaskin didn't play in that game. So he's not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Clearly, this is a different Patriots defense. But, if he gets the full workload that he has been getting last year, and hopefully like the Falcons preseason game showed us, then it's hard to bench Myles Gaskin.
Yeah, New England was pretty weak against running backs last year, but their front seven is so dramatically different. So this is not one where I was really looking at last year so much.
Right.
But they were pretty good against pass-catching running backs. They did not allow more than 36 yards. Like if Myles Gaskin gets 36 yards, that'd be great. But nobody had more than 36 receiving yards. No running back against the Patriots last year. All right, but whatever. We'll see what happens. This is an interesting game for sure.
Yeah, this is a fist fight. This is going to be a slugfest between these two teams, and it's field goal at the end to win it.
Oh, so start the kickers.
I think you're definitely starting Sanders.
Yeah, I have Sanders. I have a lot of Sanders.
I don't think Quinn Norton is somebody you want to start.
So then Jalen Waddle, Jacoby Myers. Give me your thoughts.
Number 3 receivers, I think. Myers beat up the Dolphins in that game last year too, and that was with Cam. So he's better in PPR than non-PPR. I hope he gets off to a great start, but it's not an easy matchup. They have one of the better secondaries in the league. But he'll avoid Howard and he'll avoid Byron Jones, so he's fine. And then look, Waddle's facing the Patriots without Stephon Gilmore, and he's going to clearly move around. But Jacobs, J.C. Jackson and Josh Johnson, right? No. Jonathan Jones. Jonathan Jones and Jackson. It's so confusing, their names.
Four J's in those two.
That's still a really good secondary without Stephon Gilmore in there. So it's not going to be easy for Waddle, but number 3 receiver, I think.
Yeah, I like Waddle more than Myers in both.
So Damian Harris or James White? Who do you like?
White and PPR, Harrison. No.
I'll take Harris in both.
Okay, Harris is right around. He's 19th to 22nd in non-PPR. He's closer to 24th, a little bit lower for Jamie and Heath in full PPR. And you're not starting White in non-PPR. In full PPR, 24th for Jamie. This actually surprised me, Heath, that you had James White 36th in full PPR. Thought you were a James White guy.
I don't think I ever was a James White guy. I think I was a Giovanni Bernard guy.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm excited for James White in this game just to see what he does with Mac Jones. This just feels like a game where he's going to get a lot of catches.
I think I've got a little bit of the target crunch on the Patriots because I was surprised at how low I came out on Jacoby Myers as well. I think Mac Jones first start and they're favored at home. I just expect them to run pretty heavy, and they've got a lot of guys that I'm not sure where the targets are going between Myers and the new tight end combination and James White. And so I'm maybe a little more wait and see mode for me, but definitely a run heavy projection.
We saw this a little bit last year, and I think it's something to keep an eye on. The Patriots, Bill Belichick's got a history of just really frustrating young quarterbacks. And the Dolphins, I think with Brian Flores, have a similar ability to do something along those lines. And, the game you can point to is they made things really uncomfortable for Justin Herbert last year. And I think they're going to make things uncomfortable for Mac Jones too.
A lot of checkdowns. Check down.
Right. That's why I like James White. I think it's going to be a lot of, get the ball out quick. That Dolphins defense is good.
Schrager just sent me a kind of funny quote. I appreciate the honesty here, just off subject, from Jamar Chase, talking about his drops. The ball is different because it is bigger. It doesn't have the white stripes on the side, so you can't see the ball coming from the tip point. So you actually have to look for the strings on the ball at the top, which is hard to see because the whole ball is brown and you have the 6 strings that are white. For the most part, you just have to get used to it and find out what I'm comfortable with catching. He's talking about the difference between the college ball and the NFL ball. And he also said, I don't want to blame it on me sitting on my butt the whole year, but it probably had something to do with it, of course. There's a bigger ball adjustment. It's interesting. Good for you, Jamar Chase. Maybe it is harder. You'll get used to it. All right. Let's go to the DSTs in this game. They're both startable. Patriots are a little bit higher than the Dolphins, but both startable. We've got Jacksonville at Houston. Yeah, not the marquee game, but could be fun for fantasy. Trevor Lawrence, start or sit?
Start for me.
I don't want to start him. I would start him over Cousins. But he's a top 15 quarterback, but not top 12 for me.
Yeah, I'd start him over Cousins. I'd start him over Burrow. Trying to think anybody else of big name.
How about Jalen Hurts?
No.
How about Matt Ryan?
Yes.
All right.
I would start Ryan. I think some of this is just that I have really, really low degree of confidence in Urban Meyer. And I'm afraid that both of these teams are going to be run heavy in the first game and that it's just like an ugly 20-17 type game.
Well, look, you should know Jacksonville was 31st in scoring defense in 2020, and they are switching to a 3-4 this year. Houston was 27th in scoring defense in 2020, and they are switching to a 4-3 this year. So good luck to both of them as they try to completely.
What were these teams in offensive scoring? I guess it doesn't matter for the Texans because they had Deshaun Watson.
Houston allowed 83 or more rushing yards to a running back in 5 straight games to end 2020. Let's see if that continues. James Robinson, we are really liking James Robinson this week. You should start him. Which wide receiver? Who's your favorite wide receiver in this game?
Chenault.
Over Cooks.
Yes, Cook's the second.
Are you considering Marvin Jones or DJ Chark?
Absolutely. How could you not in this matchup? But I'd like to see what they look like first. So, number 3 receivers at best.
Yeah, I want to see if DJ Chark is bigger, more physical, right? Like Urban Meyer wanted him to be or something like that. How about T. Higgins versus wide receivers in this game?
I start Chenault over Higgins.
I'll take Higgins overall.
And would you start any Houston running backs? The Jaguars allowed 5 or more catches to 9 running backs in 2020. And it wasn't because they were leading and the other teams needed to throw. They went 1-15, but they were so bad against pass catching. Look, they're changing their scheme or whatever. But
that week 1 game had a lot to do with it last year. I think Naeem Hines had
that game. Yeah, their only win last year, they allowed 17 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown to running backs.
Right,
and it's entirely new.
It is, yeah.
System.
I think the thing with the Texans running backs, you had the report yesterday that it's going to be Lindsey and Ingram doing most of the work. Like, good luck if you have to start those guys. Just to go back to the streamer situation, I think Ingram, to me, is right now the lead guy. But I don't want to trust them.
It feels like they're kind of like the Ravens on a bad team, because Ingram and Lindsey also aren't going to catch passes, because if they do that, I think it'll be David Johnson. So it's a 10 to 12 carry. Hope they fall into the end zone. Probably not going to average 5 yards per carry like the Ravens do, though.
Would you start Brandon Cooks or Josh Jacobs?
Jacobs.
Jacobs in non, but Cooks in PPR.
Half?
Cooks.
Jacobs.
Okay. All right, guys. I am not doing an hour and 15-minute episode for week 1. So we are I have to be better than this. I'm not setting the tone with this. So here we go. We got 3 games left. They're mostly easy stuff. Seattle at Indianapolis. Start Wilson, sit Wentz, start Taylor. Feel good about Carson. This was a damn good run defense last year.
Feel good? No. Sit? No. You're starting him.
Yep, start him.
Okay. Both Seattle wide receivers, good to go?
Yep.
Good to go.
All right, tell me about the Colts wide receivers and if you're interested there.
I'm not.
Pittman's a desperation play. Number 3 receiver in deeper leagues.
Thank you. It's very good. So would you start Pittman or Waddle?
Waddle.
Pittman or Naeem Hines as a flex?
Hines. I think Hines has a chance for a good game. This is another one, get the ball out quick for Carson Wentz and probably chasing points. So Paris Campbell's banged up again.
Indianapolis allowed the 4th fewest points to
send out your Spider-Man meme again. Kiki QT might get elevated.
Would you start Gerald Everett or a Patriots tight end?
Patriots.
Okay, Gerald Everett or Noah.
I'd start Everett over Henry, but I'd start Jonnu over Everett.
Noah Fant or Gerald Everett?
Fant.
Dan Arnold or Gerald Everett?
Everett.
All right.
You found a way to get us to say Gerald Everett.
I have a team where I'm starting Gerald Everett, so I just wanted to feel a little bit better about myself. Arizona's at Tennessee. Man, like you're not gonna start a second Cardinals wide receiver, but let's just see if this continues. The Titans allowed 100 yards to a wide receiver in each of the last 4 games of 2020. Let's see if Hopkins can make it 5. Would you start any wide receivers in this game that aren't, the big 3 studs, Arizona at Tennessee?
Not yet, but again, the streaming question that you asked, I think either AJ Green or Rondell Moore are worth a flyer. I'd take Moore over Green right now.
Okay. And Kyler Murray is top 5. Ryan Tannehill is top 10. Tannehill or Hurts?
Hurts.
Start Derrick Henry. Chase Edmonds, start or sit?
I think he's a borderline must start in PPR and a flex and none.
I'm more wait and see with Edmonds. I mean, especially if you went 0 RB and you drafted him in the 6th round or whatever, you're probably starting him. There's not too many guys who were drafted after him that I would start over him, but I'm a little bit nervous. I want to see what the run split is between him and Connor, and I want to see if I do think if Rondale Moore is heavily involved in the game plan, that's going to be a bad thing for Chase Edmonds.
How about Edmonds versus Damian Harris?
I'll take Edmonds in PPR and Harrison none.
I think I have Harris ahead in both.
And any interest in Anthony Firkser?
Yeah.
Yes, but not a must-start guy.
Heath Firkser or Everett?
Firkser.
Oh, no. All right, Baltimore's at Las Vegas. Stat of the game, Marquise Brown had 8 good matchups last year, if you include 2 games against Cincinnati, who actually wasn't really that bad against wide receivers. In those 8 games for Marquise Brown, well, I mean, it's fine. But this actually wasn't a great matchup, and he still did really well against them. He scored 9 or more non-PPR fantasy points, 13 or more PPR fantasy points in 6 of those 8 games. Starter sit Marquise Brown.
I think he's a start in the 3 receiver league. He has a great track record in openers. In 2 openers, he's combined for 45 PPR points, over 100 yards in both those games. No Rashad Bateman. Now, this Raiders secondary should be better with the addition of Casey Hayward alone. So I don't think it's going to be an easy cakewalk for Marquise Brown, but I'll take my chances with him. Obviously, he's going to be in a lot of showdown lineups on Monday night.
Just based on the guys we've talked about so far, I would start him over Marvin Jones and DJ Chark. I would start him over Brandon Cooks. I would start him over Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
I'd start him over Myers and Waddle too.
I would start him over Myers. I've got Waddle a little bit higher.
I'll tell you, if Sammy Watkins were not on the Ravens, then I would say Marquise Brown is going to outscore Allen Robinson.
It's probably going to be a week 1 Sammy Watkins boom followed by a week 2 Sammy Watkins disappointment.
Yeah, maybe. But I would have this great bold prediction about Brown. I'm going to do it anyway. Let's just make a gentleman's bet, okay? Anyone who wants to take it, Marquise Brown over Allen Robinson. No, I wouldn't actually do that on my fantasy team, but we're having fun. It's football season. We're having fun. It's a podcast. So, just
it's a podcast designed to help people with their fantasy football.
I'm telling you, start Allen Robinson over Marquise Brown, but I just kind of feel like Marquise Brown is going to be better.
You got to do something if it doesn't come through.
Yeah, you get zero credit for this.
Save your eyebrows.
No, yes. I get almost. Yeah, okay, fine. I get almost no credit for it. I want just a little bit of credit if it happens, just a little bit.
That's you got to do something.
I just I don't know. All right, Josh Jacobs, we already talked about earlier. Start Lamar Jackson. Gus Edwards, top 12 in non-PPR, 14th in PPR for Jamie, 17th for Dave, 22nd for Heath. So he's a little more cautious there. And I asked you earlier, AJ Dillon or Jamal Williams, but what about Tyson Williams? How about this? The Ravens won 8 games last year by 14 or more points. Nine games. In each of their last 4 wins of by 14 or more points, 2 running backs had at least 8 PPR points. So that's not great. But do you think Tyson Williams, would you start him over AJ Dillon or Jamal Williams?
No, but it's not going to be surprising if he's better than those guys.
I do think that you are a little bit more because this is the second or third time you've referenced the potential blowout of this game. This game's got a 4-point spread.
Yeah,
right
I'm taking the Ravens.
I understand.
4-point spread for the road team, though.
It is a 4-point spread for the road team, but there's several games that are much more potential blowouts. I don't know that it's going to be a blowout.
It's 4.5, Heath.
Pete said yesterday it was going to be a shootout.
I don't get it. I mean, all right. I feel like
we got to see the Ravens pass rush if it's still the same. You would anticipate it still being really good, but they lost some guys.
They did.
Secondary is still amazing. So yeah. you're look the Raiders. We know Darren Waller is going to get his targets and his opportunities. Those 2 other guys got to step up big time in Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards and Hunter Renfrow. I mean, this is the most incomplete receiving core because we just don't know. Ruggs is a 1st-round pick that has a big opportunity in front of him. Can he be awesome? Hopefully. Can Edwards be awesome? Hopefully. Can they both stink? Yeah, they could, especially against Humphrey and Peters. That's not an easy situation for those guys to go out there. And Derek Carr typically, could struggle in this type of scenario. So I hope he plays well. I can't imagine ever playing Carson Wentz over Derek Carr. But it's not an easy situation for this Raiders offense, especially that if they get behind, they're not going to run the ball to any level of success.
How about the fact that the Ravens won 9 games last year by 14 or more points? How many times do you think they were favored by 14 or more points? They blow people out. They crush. If you're not on the same level as the Ravens, they just destroy you, especially in week 1. 38-6 against Cleveland last year. The year before that, it was the Dolphins game in week 1. All right. Anyway, I'm assuming you're not starting Henry Ruggs or Bryan Edwards.
No.
Start the tight ends, start the Ravens defense, and start having fun watching football. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We will talk to you tomorrow.
We still got 6 more minutes. What are you talking about?
No, gosh, too long. With the NFC home games, Marquise Brown over Allen Robinson. Give me a little bit of credit, ladies and gentlemen.
I thought you said Sammy Watkins over Allen Robinson.
I didn't say that. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy football.